Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I am Steve Smith. Happy Sunday morning. Scoffers and Naysayers, right? Boy, we've all dealt with them. And they are one of the biggest irritants in our personal lives, at least, that we deal with as preppers, probably, right? First off, I'm going to invite everybody to leave their comments. I'm going to talk a little bit about dealing with them and the importance of dealing with them. Okay. A lot of people say ignore them. I'm going to say it's important to deal with them and explain why I think that is. So anyway, I'm going to invite everybody, leave your own comments down in the comments about things like this that you've dealt with. What made me think about making this one this morning was that some of the comments from the last one that I put up, will your children starve? And some of the comments, were very illuminating and made me think about this. A lot of times, who was it that said, when I was 18, my father was a fool, and as I got older, I was surprised how much the old man had learned. Was that Mark Twain or Will Rogers? One of those great American philosophers, right? And I think I put that in one of my responses to one of the comments yesterday. First off, I also welcome everybody. Welcome all the new people. We're just exploding, both on YouTube and on Patreon. Great to have you all here. Do participate. Read the comments. We got some smart people here, and add your own bits of wisdom or your questions or anything like that. All we ask, we're kind of a nice community here, so be nice, be polite, and you will be welcome and valued. And if you'd like to come join us on Patreon, I recommend that you do, because I cover the generalities here on YouTube, and I cover more specific things and things I really can't get into on YouTube over on the Patreon channel. So come be a member with us over there. I think you'll like it. You'll get a lot out of it. It's only $1 a month, and the link is down here. I always put the link down there. Just hit that. It says link to Patreon or something like that. And or you can just go to patreon.com/integrative preparedness. That'll get you there too. Okay. Scoffers and Naysayers. When most of us got into and started to realize that preparing was important, we were pretty much alone. If we live any kind of normal life, most of us normies, we were the singularity, the individual who had this epiphany or this growing gnawing inside of us saying, something's wrong. Something's a little dodgy with the world, how things are going. Crazy things have happened. And then when we started looking into it, we saw a history, thousands of years of people having problems, right? And we saw that really history, it was the story of those who were prepared overcoming those who were not, right? And it's not that we had any idea that we wanted to overcome anyone, but we saw that it was always the unprepared, the weak, the ones who didn't plan ahead, were always succumbing to the winds of change and the wills of others. So we grew, each of us in our own way. We grew into being very preparedness-minded people. If you want to call it preppers, that's okay. I thought for a long time about what would be a better term, but you can't. It says it. We're preppers. We are preparing, like we say, we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and that's what it's all about. Preparedness is really ultimate responsibility. It means that you are willing to give up a little bit of immediate gratification, of instant gratification, in order to put back against uncertain times in the future. This used to be just normal life, right? Those of us who had grandparents and parents who came through the Depression, the Great Depression, and my granddad used to say it wasn't that great. We remember, we know how they would hide nickels and dimes. My grandmother used to tie up nickels and dimes in the corners of handkerchiefs and hidden under doilies places. And, my mother would tell me stories about that and saying, that somehow when they needed something, when they needed a nickel or a dime or something like that, her mom always knew where to find one. And that's because as soon as they made a nickel or a dime, they didn't go out and spend it on stuff. They weren't always looking for something to do, something to entertain themselves. They were more, interested and focused on actually living life. And as a result, I think they developed their spiritual and mental and emotional fortitude far, far greater than many in the current generations. So, we when we get into preparedness, we become used to, the raised eyebrows, the subtle scoffing, crying out loud, what are you scared of? You're scared of everything. Oh my gosh, and from those little things to outright put downs. You're crazy, you're nuts, you're one of those crazy preppers. And, that show, what was that show that used to be on, Doomsday Preppers? That didn't do a lot to make preppers seem, too emotionally stable many times. So it was easy for these other people who didn't want to put the time and the effort and the mental energy into thinking about preparing for days ahead. It made it easier for them to ridicule and scoff, and certainly they made the best of it, didn't they? They really did. It can be, and that can be disheartening. It can be hurtful. I know, from a lot of people tell me when it comes from family, especially, it can be hurtful. And whether those people intend to hurt or not, I don't know. I think it's easy as a great segment of society that when faced with something that they don't understand or don't particularly, support, it's easy to scoff. And then those of us who have taken the time to learn our history, to learn and really understand, and who have had experiences showing us what the world is like and what people are like at their worst, then it's up to us to try to deal with it. Well, I think that it's important to deal with it, and I want to tell you why. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how you might try, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. A lot of people will say, just ignore them. Well, that is sometimes easier said than done, right? Because it gets under your skin. You say, crying out loud, I'm trying to do my best to make sure that my family is going to be well taken care of in hard times. And to have somebody make fun of it or scoff at it, that can be hurtful, And then I've had many people tell me that's happened in their life, in their family, and it can cause problems. And the same people who would think you were crazy if you didn't have homeowners insurance, car insurance, all those kinds of insurances, would think you're crazy to have the kind of life insurance that comes in the form of food. Right? Food insurance, or to be able to protect yourself. All those things. I don't have to go through it. You all know all of the things that go into preparedness. Excuse me while I take a sip. So if you say simply ignore it, well, it may or may not take care of the immediate situation. It still gets under your skin, right? After a while, I'm sure that you finally go, never mind. But the thing is by ignoring it, you invite more of it, right? When Because these people can kind of be bullies sometimes, by saying, "Oh, Uncle Bob, he's the crazy one," blah blah blah. And when you don't respond to that, it just invites more. This is why I recommend dealing with it as opposed to not dealing with it. So how do we do that? I think, and most, those of us who are preparedness-minded, we are that way because of our knowledge, right? Not because of our lack of knowledge. So we know, because we have studied, we know what's going on in the world. We know, to a greater or lesser degree, the political climate, either locally or nationally or worldwide, globally. We pay attention to those things. We see what's coming down the road. We look up ahead down the road. We're not, as we're driving down the road, we're not looking 10 feet ahead of our car. We're looking down the road, right? So we have arrived at these feelings and beliefs not as a result of ignorance or paranoia, but from a knowledge base that came as a result of studying it. We also have an understanding of history, and we have seen great famines in the past, and we have seen what happened to people who weren't prepared. We've seen what happened to people who weren't prepared to defend themselves, right? Or to feed themselves, or whatever. And we've seen that, the migration of people throughout history has always been those who couldn't stand up, who weren't prepared themselves to stand up or to challenge or to change the hierarchy under which they live. They had to scoot. They had to go. They had to leave. They had to bug out, right? So anyway, my suggestion in dealing with scoffers and naysayers is to turn it right back on them. You don't have to do it in a mean way, but turn it back on them and say, why don't you believe that this is necessary? Instead of saying, why don't you believe this could happen? And that's an easy one for them to go, oh, for crying out loud, it's not going to happen. Well, there's a brilliant answer, isn't it? It's just not going to. And the funny thing is that so many of these people have developed the ability, with the tone of voice and the shake of their head and all of this, to kind of come off as knowledgeable. That kind of realistic. Oh, he's a realist. He's a brilliant cynicist. That always seems to appeal to the masses. It seems so much more. Intellectually superior to give it kind of one of the, oh, for crying out loud, I don't bother myself with that, as opposed to the person who does, right? So turn it back around. Why don't you believe this is necessary? Well, because it's never going to happen. Okay. What do you base that on exactly? I mean, what can you tell me, that it will not happen? Well, it's just not going to happen. Well, have you studied history? Are you aware of all of the times it has happened? Well, I don't know about that. Well, okay, you don't know about it because you don't know about it. Okay, these people here, you're coming at it from a position of knowledge, which developed your feeling. They're coming from a position of ignorance, and you want to illuminate that. Why do you want to? Not to make them feel bad, not to just to have an argument, because they have an effect on others. A lot of times this will happen in front of other people, and they will be able to have that effect by dismissing your position. They will be able to have an effect and make other people doubt your position too. And if you really believe, like we do, that preparedness is important, you don't want other people to be misled and to think that is just worthy of being dismissed. You want to be, if you care about the survival of people, if you care about the survival of your children, of your family, of your friends, of anybody who will listen, you don't want them to be led astray by someone's ignorance. Okay, these people are leading people astray because they're ignorant, and sometimes they're willfully ignorant. I mean, they're proud of what they don't know, and they're not going to give up their ignorance for anything, right? I'll tell you a story about a guy. I worked. Some of you know I worked over at a big hospital for many, many years, and somehow the copy of my first book. What book? Oh, by the way, I always put the links to my books down there. This the Stone Mount series. It's about preparing for, surviving, and rebuilding after a CME, after the whole world goes to pot. It's mainly lessons in preparedness and survival. And anyway, so somehow people at the hospital, a couple of people knew that I'd written the book. I don't know how long ago that was, 6, 7 years ago. 5, maybe. I don't keep track of time like that. And somehow somebody in the administration office had gotten it. And, you know, the CEOs and the CFOs and the CNOs and all the O's, you know. And I found out, somebody told me, man, it's going through, somebody got the book and they're lending it to each other. All through the corporate offices of the hospital. And I said, well, that's interesting. Those don't seem like the kind of people that would really be, you know, attracted to my book. But apparently it drew a huge following. Finally, one of the chief nursing officer saw me in a hallway, and she says, my gosh, she says, everybody's talking about your book. Now, I'm not telling this to pat myself on the back. There's a point here, so stay with me. I says, really? Well, that's nice. I says, have you read it yet? And she said, no, I haven't. I took it home, and my husband's reading, and he won't let me have it until he's done. Well, it turned out her husband was a lieutenant on the highway patrol. So, you know, you would think he would be very tuned in as far as, well, maybe you wouldn't, preparedness and natural disasters and emergency preparedness. You know, they all go through all this training all the time, and we did it all the time. Emergency preparedness, and I'll tell you, to be honest, that stuff is a bunch of BS. And I told them so. They didn't really like me telling them that, but that's the way it was. It was because I was trying to give them good information, and, you know, they didn't want it. But anyway, amongst the executive offices, so her husband was reading this book. So I said, well, that's great. And then when my next book came out, I think I gave them all their own copies, and they got to the point to where everybody up there was asking me, when's your next book coming out? Well, the point of this story is that a couple of years ago, several years ago maybe, she came up to me. We were having in the middle of a helicopter landing, and she came over to me. She says, you're freaking my husband out. She said, they just got back from taking their kids to Disney World in Florida. And they had taken one of their children's friends with them. And she said, the whole time we were down there, he was saying, what if it happened, what happened in Steve's books, what if it happened right now? We're 2,000 miles from home. We got somebody else's kid with us. What would we do? How would we get home? How would we survive? She said he didn't enjoy that whole vacation because he was freaked out, knowing, not because he's paranoid, knowing that it is a possibility. Finally, because it broke through. Before that, he'd never considered it, right? And he realized it was a possibility, it is a possibility, and you need to be prepared for it, and he wasn't. He became a believer. A lot of other people have become believers as a result of reading my books. So I didn't mean, actually, I didn't mean to bring this up, but if you want a way to make people believers, buy them a copy of my book. Send them a copy. There's a way down there you can say, hey, Steve, sign a copy personally to this person and send it. I'll be happy to. The way to do that's down there. But anyway, it's if you can deal with these people, respond to them, you know, and say, have them support their position, which they can't because it's a position based on ignorance, and not. And I mean that in a real sense of ignorance, meaning not having the information. And whether you bring them around or not, it will help people around who will see it when you come at it from a very fact-based situation. What do you base that on? What do you base your opinion on? Haven't you read history? Don't you understand what's going on in the world? And then say your position is based on not knowing these things. And that's a dangerous position to hold. My position is based on years of research, understanding what's going on in our world, understanding history, and assuming a responsibility for making sure that those who depend on me are going to have the best shot they can. That's why I prepare, because I love my family. I feel responsibility to provide for and protect them. And that's why I do it. And you should consider it. What do you think? I have found that to be successful in many cases. Not all. Some people just won't give it up, right? But I've found it to be successful, and I've turned a lot of people with that. So I offer that to you. Let me know what you have experienced in the past and what your successes, your failures, what you've tried, what you've said. All of that. Again, so I'll let you go. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. It's just chilly out here, but I'm going to go out and have breakfast. And again, I want to invite you to come over to Patreon. I cover a lot of stuff there. People say, you're just pumping Patreon. Yes, I am. I want you over there. It's only $1 a month, for crying out loud. And I cover so many things over there that I don't cover here. And they're the things that if you really are preparedness-minded, you should know. There are some things that you don't even know you want to know, but you need to know that I cover over there. I've had an interesting life, and I've learned from most of it. So I'll leave you with that. You all have a great day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.